Welcome to Riverside, one of Toronto's most historic and vibrant neighborhoods. From its Victorian charm to its vibrant art scenes, Riverside has it all. Join me as I take you through its rich history, real estate market, and future developments in the neighborhood. Riverside's story begins in the 19th century. Its proximity to the Don River made it perfect for early settlers, traders, and eventually manufacturers. The neighborhood, like most of Toronto at the time, was an industrial hub, with most buildings either being a factory or a warehouse. As Toronto's industry grew, so did the neighborhood. The residential part of the neighborhood was mainly housing for the working class who worked at these factories and warehouses. Most of those homes were built in the late 1800s and early 1900s, which is what gives the area that historic Victorian Edwardian charm that people love about the neighborhood. One of the defining landmarks of the neighborhood is the Riverside Bridge you see behind me. Now, it's more than just a connection between Corktown and Riverside, or what some would consider to be the downtown core and Toronto's East End. The bridge is a symbol of the growth that happened, and it became a gateway to the city, really, and one of the few ways back in the day to move goods from the east end of the city to the downtown core.
The bridge also has a piece of artwork at the top of it. In 1996, the Riverside BIA commissioned artwork for the area. The installation is called Time and a Clock. It features 3 pieces in the neighborhood, with the most notable being the clock atop the bridge with the line, "This river I step in is not the river I stand in."
This is a reference to the Greek philosopher Heraclitus and his quote, which is, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." It's a way of saying that things are never the same. Things are constantly flowing, evolving, and changing around us.
This is the Don River that separated the East End and the core until this bridge was built.
Now you know about Riverside's past, but how did it go from an industrial neighborhood to a trendy East End neighborhood that it is today? Well, most of that change happened in the last 2 decades alone, believe it or not. As Toronto's economy shifted from manufacturing, this area saw a huge economic decline in the 80s and 90s mainly. Most of the mills and warehouses just became vacant, businesses were bankrupt, and the population declined because everyone that lived here was workers and there were no jobs for them anymore. In the 90s and the early 2000s, when Toronto had their urban revitalization program, which was turning cities' old industrial areas into proper urban cities, like we saw happen on Queens Quay. So once the city came in and they got developers on board, the vacant factories and mills were all converted into lofts, office spaces like you see behind me. Like, this is an original industrial building, but now it's office space, and they made it into a trendy neighborhood. One of the most visible symbols of Riverside's transformation is the Broadview Hotel right behind me.
This building story reflects the neighborhood's larger shift. Built in 1893, it originally served as a commercial hub and then later as a boarding house for the area's workers, where they could rent a room for $1.50 a night. As Riverside's industrial importance faded, the hotel became run down and home to adult entertainment venues from the 1970s to the 2010s.
But as the neighborhood began to change, so too did the Broadview Hotel.
A developer bought the property in 2014, fully renovated and restored it, and it reopened as a boutique hotel in 2017. It's now home to a trendy restaurant and a rooftop bar that has become one of the hottest spots in the city. The revitalization of the Broadview Hotel is a perfect symbol of Riverside's story. What was once a place for laborers is now a destination for Toronto's social scene.
Now let's take a walk through the neighborhood and check out modern-day Riverside. Queen Street here. This is the main artery of the neighborhood, and it's the center of its transformation. Now, there's a pretty big mix of old and new, and you can see that with the old industrial buildings there. And then you have buildings like this, which was complete in 2011. And El Ponte, and the ground floor of this condo, is actually a really great restaurant. They serve Italian, and it's not only a hotspot with local Torontonians and the people in the neighborhood itself, but people from all outside of Toronto, whenever they come to visit, tourists love to go there. It's a great Italian restaurant. And fun fact actually about the whole entire building and that this whole block of what El Ponte's in is that it used to be home to the Convoy Carriage Company, and they made rooftops for horse carriages. Then as the car came along, they switched to making bodies for the Buick and Rolls-Royce at the time. And then in 1924, the whole thing burnt down and it was all lost to that fire. And then it basically just sat empty forever until in 2011, as I mentioned, this condo got built. So this is El Ponte. And then just across the street, that is Sink Lofts, which was complete in 2013 by Streetcar Developments. And the ground floor is still empty retail-wise. except for on the corner, there's a Dark Horse Espresso, and the units themselves aren't anything special. They're kind of just, there's a few nice lofts, but most of them are just kind of your standard condo unit. So we're at the ground floor of Sink Lofts. That's the Dark Horse Espresso. And then just across the street, that is Blackbird Baking right there. And then this is the Smith Block. There's a nice Welcome to Riverside mural right there. But in the middle between these two buildings was what was the center of Smith Block back in the day. And now the same developer of Sinkloft Streetcar Developments, who, I mean, they have quite a few developments in the area. They have a proposal to reconstruct the center of this and make it one whole block again, and then renovate these as well, which is why, first of all, there's the notice there, and then there's quite a few vacant tenants. So from here you can see it, that's the wall that was knocked down, so you can kind of still see pieces of the building and where it used to connect, and that's where it'll be filled in. You can kind of see in this old photo I have a bit of the center and then the three other buildings at the edge of the corner. I know this is probably my least favorite spot to walk by all the time. The vacant retail, the parking lot, and the aging of the buildings just kind of feels like you're in a different area when you walk by. So it's exciting that something could be here and it could be a nice new project in the future. Across the street is the Edwin. It was formerly the Edwin Hotel, and you can actually see it in this photo from the 1920s of Wrigley's gum billboard. Billboard is on the side of the Smith Block, and then that building with the 4 windows and the hip roof is the Edwin Hotel. It's now home to a community housing project that was the first of its kind in Ontario in 2010, and there's housing for about 30 people who want to get off the streets. They're expected to pay a portion of rent, and they can't stay longer than 4 years. There's also counselors on site to help them start fresh and transition them to permanent housing. Just a few steps behind the Edwin is a nice small park. It is named after Joel Weeks, who was an 8-year-old boy that lived in a public housing project just up on Dundas. There were no playgrounds nearby for the children to play at, and so while playing with his friends, Joel climbed into an uncovered sewer entrance and was swept away. This tragic accident led to the park being named in his honor when it opened in 2012. The park is a pretty good size. There's nice walkways, there's really nice basketball courts here, and there's also a large playground for kids, and then there's some nice green spaces with seating areas and picnic benches. Back to Queen Street, and right across the Edwin is Baseball Place. It's part of a huge project by, again, Streetcar Developments. It's called Riverside Square, but pretty much everyone calls it Baseball Place because that's the street name here. And that street name is original as well, all the way from back in the late 1800s, as this land was a baseball stadium that was home to Toronto's first professional baseball team called the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there's a fun fact for any sports fans. The original Toronto Maple Leafs were a baseball team. There are multiple condo buildings here, and the condos themselves aren't really anything special. They're your kind of classic built for investor, 400 to 600 square foot-ish, 1-bed, 1+1, and 2-bed condos. And they're just built to be dirt cheap and then rent out at a premium. And they're all pretty much that same cookie cutter layout. And so you can see behind me all the car dealerships. That's the road, and then this is all courtyard. Those are the other buildings, and then more courtyard behind me. So it's all connected to the condo, which makes it pretty crazy here. And so tower-wise, this used to be a hole in the ground. Now it's done. Over there, which is the one on Queen, used to also be a hole in the ground a few years ago. Now it's done. This is one of the original ones, if I remember right. I think as long as I can remember, this one's been here. And then same with this one and this one right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the park. This is their other building. And I mean, they put brick on it, I guess, to try and match the neighborhood look of, the old industrial brick. But then they still have this cheap black paneling. And then they have, that's your main entrance, which it looks like a side entrance, so it's also not pedestrian street level friendly. And then most urban planners and urban architects say that this kind of tall window makes areas feel cold and not pedestrian friendly because you instantly realize as you walk by that you're up next to a tall condo building. Whereas over there, stuff is street level, so there down, that's like pedestrian height, we would say. Makes you feel like you're up against a giant building, which you are, but people don't like to realize that they are. That's Broadview Hotel, which we spoke about earlier, and then
This is still the baseball place building, and right next to it is a co-op house that is being renovated by Streetcar Developments and another building added, and we'll come back to that in a bit. Then on the corner of Queen and Broadview, you have artwork installation number 2 for the time and a clock. This one says distance equals velocity times time. Then you have better late than never. Then too soon, free from time. And then final one is time is money, money is time.
See the rooftop bar up there, and as you continue east across Broadview, the shops and restaurants continue. Riverside Market is a great little convenience store, but they also have fresh produce, like surprisingly decently fresh. Then just a bit further down is Butchers of Distinction right there, which is a great little butcher shop. Then across from them right there is the Opera House. The Opera House is a bit of an iconic landmark here in Riverside. It was originally built in 1909 as a vaudeville theater, just like the Runnymede Theater we saw in my last neighborhood video. The Opera House now hosts live music, comedy, and all kinds of different performances, making it a key part of the neighborhood's cultural scene. Some amazing artists come and perform here, and with it being such an intimate venue, it's an experience you'd really never forget. Another historic building is the Canadian Bank of Commerce building here, which was built in 1905 and is now the headquarters for Stephan Carras. He's a fashion designer whose fashion pieces are in the French couture style, and he's also the designer and developer for the uniform that Tim Hortons employees wear, so he dabbles in corporate uniforms as well. Then just a bit down the street you have the Toronto Library branch. The Toronto Library branch here was built in 1913, and the building's architect was E.J. Lennox, who also designed the Old City Hall and Casa Loma. The building was a post office for 62 years, and it then became the TPL branch it is today, along with the community center, which is right there. And then, if you're wondering what's being built next to it, it is Biblio Lofts, and we'll come back to that as well when we talk about future developments in the neighborhood. As we keep walking down Queen Street, you'll notice there's a great mix of businesses. There's a nice little flower shop, there's salons, facial spas, all kinds of businesses here. We're coming up on a pretty famous business right here. Bonjour Brioche has been here since 1997, and there is always a huge line for brunch on the weekends. This is one of the best French breakfasts you can get in the city, and I believe some scenes from Handmaid's Tale were also filmed here. And speaking of film, we are right at Degrassi Street, which is where it all started for the hit TV series Degrassi. So that's Cafe Brioche over here, and we are on Degrassi Street. So now that I've taken one of the residential side streets up, let's go over the real estate market, because we're going to be walking by some nice homes, and let's talk about them, how much they cost, and if they're selling or not in this neighborhood. I'll also, since we're on Degrassi Street, show you the little plaques and things that they have for Bruce and Degrassi, and then you can kind of see that and how that's a big part of this street, and this is where Degrassi started. And just a few steps up from where we were is Bruce Mackey Park, named after Bruce Mackey, who, the plaques are right here. He offered his home up to the original filmmakers of Degrassi, and his home is where the TV show Degrassi was born and first started. You can pause and read these plaques if you want to check them out. This final plaque is just about him himself and his life. And I guess this is kind of your first look at one of the side residential streets in Riverside. You can see the homes are beautiful here. There's actually one of the original workers' cottages. And so let's go over the real estate market stats. 2023 saw 53 freehold homes sell. The year before that, 80 freehold homes had sold in the neighborhood. For 2024 so far, 36 freehold homes have sold. So putting it on track for kind of a similar year to 2023. For 2023, 86 condo units had sold in the neighborhood. Oh, there's a train going by. For 2023, 86 condo units had sold. The year before that, 95 condo units had sold. And for 2024 so far, 95 condo units have sold already. If it continues that way, it's putting the year on track to be the most condo units sold since 2021, when 137 condo units had sold. But 2021 was a bit of an anomaly year. Oh, another train, wow, busy traffic. So if we don't count 2021, then the year with the most condos sold would be 2014 with 105 sold. So we've already almost sold that many this year. So it's a pretty big year for condos here. I think it's just because there's a lot more condos available. and people want to be in this neighborhood, but it's hard to afford the homes here, so they're entering the market via condos. So you're most commonly going to see semi-detached along with row and townhomes in the neighborhood. And then price-wise, detached, you're averaging around 1.4 million. Semi-detached, you're averaging around 1.2, and then row homes, townhomes, you're averaging around 1 million, but it varies a lot because a lot of these homes are in different condition because it's such an old neighborhood, so that can skew the price value a lot, so it just really depends on what you've got. And then for condos, as always, it varies between the buildings. Baseball Place being an investor place, most of them go below $1,000 a square foot, especially now as investor units like that fall off and less people are interested in them. And then sink lofts, you're paying, which was right across the street, you're paying around $1,000 a square foot. A nice loft like the new build by Eastern and Logan is the Wonder Lofts, and there you're paying just above $1,000 a square foot, but it depends on the unit because there are a few different layouts there, so there's some at $1,200. I'd say you're probably around $1,200 a square foot there. And then there's a few stacked condo townhomes scattered, like at Dundas and Carroll, which is kind of at the end of the park of Joel Weeks Park, Dundas and Carroll there. There's a few condo stacked townhomes. Those are also at around $1,000 a square foot. Overall, the real estate market is decently steady in the area. Condos haven't fallen off as much as they have in other areas, but that's because these condos are pretty high demand, I'd say, decent layout aside from Baseball Place, and you can see that in Baseball Place prices as they're really falling off. And then for homes, there's just such strong demand for homes in this area because they're so unique with the Edwardian and Victorian designs, and it's a great neighborhood to be in, so super high demand, which keeps the prices at a high price point here. Now let's head back to Queen Street so we can finish up walking down Queen Street. We'll head east on Queen towards Logan Ave, which is the border of Riverside, and that's where we'll finish walking.
So we're back on Queen Street. You can see Degrassi Street there. There's Ontario line work being done on this bridge here, which is actually a very, very old bridge. So it's very impressive that they're able to do this work without fully tearing it down and keeping it operational. Then just on the other side of the bridge is Jimmy Simpson Park and Rec Center. Just outside the Rec Center is the third and final piece of the Time on a Clock, our installation. 4 words, 1 on each pole that are to be read in no particular order. The Rec Center is an amazing piece in the neighborhood. They host all kinds of programs and have great facilities. There's a huge gym with a basketball court and nets. There's an indoor pool, a kitchen facility, a games room, change rooms. Outside, it's amazing as well. There's tennis courts, basketball courts, skating rinks, and a huge open soccer field and playground area. Now let's head back to Queen Street. So just outside Jimmy Simpson Park is this condo building, which is 875 Queen Street East. It was complete in 2020, and you can see how the street design is much better than at Baseball Place because the stores are street level, which allows you to not feel like you are by this giant condo building, and the building itself almost matches the neighborhood's look and feel with different colored brick and stuff they tried. And I mean, just trying to show you a decent example of a condo building that matches the neighborhood compared to Baseball Place. Across the street from the building is Hooked, great fishmonger. They post lots on Instagram and always let you know when they've got something fresh and unique in. They're actually having a piece of missing middle housing built on top of their neighbor. It's 4 rental units built by Bicycle Properties. It's nice to see something like this done where you don't need to destroy any buildings, you don't need to close any traffic lanes, and you don't need to completely change the neighborhood. Just come in, add 4 units, and call it a day. I bet you most people walking by on that side of the street don't even know that that's up there. And then this is Queen and Logan, which is the eastern border of Riverside. So this is where Riverside ends.
Now Queen Street was mainly what you saw today, and that's because, well, Queen Street is really the artery of Riverside, and most of the stuff is on it, whereas the other streets are really just residential side streets that run up it, and there's not much there. Queen Street pretty much has everything. So seeing Queen Street, you pretty much saw it all. Now that we did the full walking tour part, let's get into some of the future developments in the area in terms of condo developments, but also that big Ontario line project. Let's get into it. So for some of the upcoming projects in the neighborhood, first off, you have 685 Queen Street East here, a project by Streetcar Developments. This home is undergoing renovations, and it was a co-op building. Don't know what co-ops are. Check out my video on them here. There was 9 affordable co-op housing units here originally, and the plan is to add 17 more units with an additional building in the back. This is an example of adding housing while keeping the look and feel of the current neighborhood. Right next to the library, they are currently building Biblio Lofts. It will be 7 stories and have 28 units. The construction looks good so far, and it looks like the renderings, which is always a good sign. I have a feeling this building will match the neighborhood's look and feel quite nicely, and this corner will be beautiful with the library and this building together. Then, just up from the library is 786 to 788 Queen Street here. It has a proposal for a rental building that will have 15 market rate rental units. It's this set of buildings here. The proposal is in its early stages, so lots can change, and it may never even happen. I'm not sure if they will just renovate the existing building and then build on top like they did by Hooked, or if they will demolish this and start fresh. Down one of the residential side streets, you'll find 50 Mackey Street. So what was this single-family detached property, they're now building a 4-story, 8-unit rental building on top, plus a 2-story garden suite. This is another missing middle project built by Bicycle Properties, the same people who built the rental building on top of Hook's neighbor. It took them a bit to get this project going as it got deferred in 2022 due to local opposition, so the neighbors weren't really happy with this one coming in. The final development is 8 Degrassi here, so this whole empty space will be a 6-story, 16-unit rental building. Percy Ellis, the developer, did try to sell the land this past February, but the listing expired May 31st and it hasn't gone back up since. So I'm not sure if this project will go anywhere with the current state of condo construction in Ontario. With all this development and more to come, the need for improved infrastructure has really become apparent. Riverside's proximity to the downtown core makes it a popular destination for commuters who take the 501 and 503 streetcars into the downtown core and then back home at the end of the day. And those streetcars are often overcrowded, and that is where the Ontario line comes in. Toronto's rapid transit project is going to have a stop right here. That's Queen, and this side street here is Mackey. In terms of where we are, that's the Queen Bridge where the trains are going over. On the back side of it is Cafe Brioche. And then right here, this is the Jimmy Simpson Recreation Center. There's lots of construction noise, but this is going to be one of the main stops that will help get commuters into the downtown core. Now, while this project promises to bring better transit access to Toronto, it's not without its challenges. Nearby areas, like the homes by the Pape Ave School, are having some issues with Metrolinx, which is creating high tensions between residents of not only that neighborhood, but the surrounding neighborhoods and Metrolinx themselves. The issue is that Metrolinx is in the process of expropriating homes around that Pape Ave School that they initially said they wouldn't need and they wouldn't buy, and that those homeowners were safe right where they were. This has of course caused anxiety not only among the residents who are in those homes, but residents in other neighborhoods where Ontario line construction is taking place, like right behind me. There are homes right there, and this is the station. So these neighbors to the Ontario line development are now always anxious about what if Metrolinx comes forward and says they need my home, because they're doing certain amounts of construction work and it may spill over due to tunneling or whatever else. I'm not an engineer, I don't really know, but it's a worry among residents. Now, Riverside itself has not seen the same level of home expropriation as around the Pape Ave area, but this issue does highlight the complex relationship between development and community preservation and the tension that surrounds it. Now, Riverside is a neighborhood that has truly seen it all. From its industrial roots to its vibrant present. As you've seen, the community here is rich with history, yet always evolving. Whether it's the transformation of the Broadview Hotel, the trendy shops and restaurants, or the ongoing development shaping the future, Riverside remains a place where past and present come together in exciting ways. If you're looking for a neighborhood full of character, history, community, and opportunity, then you definitely should check out Riverside. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed another neighborhood video. If you have any questions about the neighborhood or any other neighborhoods I've done, feel free to drop a comment down below or contact me directly. My contact info is down in the description as always. Thanks for watching again. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.